Ridley Scott's 1979 film Alien has one of the great taglines of all time: "In space, no one can hear you scream." It was marketed accordingly as a kind of horror film in outer space, with Sigourney Weaver's Ripley character the quote-unquote last girl after everyone else is killed off. This does not do the movie justice, however. The horror genre is much too broad, spanning the Texas Chainsaw Massacre on one end to the Silence of the Lambs on the other. That's a big chasm. And to lump Ripley in with the passive heroines of traditional horror films, think Halloween, Friday the 13th, Chainsaw, etc., is to do her character gross injustice. The film is much better assigned to a genre more often associated with literature than film, one that most people have heard of and yet few can define in detail. Alien is pure Gothic. Horace Walpole's 1764 novel The Castle of Otranto is generally credited with laying the foundational elements. It's a pretty bad book, and although Walpole was greatly inspired by Shakespeare, he is, to put it politely, no Shakespeare. But the framework he provided has been used to much greater effect by the likes of Edgar Allan Poe, Bram Stoker, Daphne du Maurier, Shirley Jackson, and Stephen King. What are these foundational elements? The stories almost always feature a castle or mansion, sometimes in ruins, sometimes haunted. They have secret passages, crypts, and catacombs with dark corridors and winding stairs. Darkness is pervasive, accented by flickering or fading light. There are extreme landscapes. There are omens and ancestral curses. There are very often elements of magic or the supernatural. They feature passionate heroes and villains. There is usually a curious, innocent heroine who needs saving. They often feature a foolish older woman. A secret, often someone's identity, is revealed at the end. There are horrifying and terrifying events grounded in the grotesque and the macabre. It begs an obvious question: why do we love this stuff? The answer is because we're fascinated by our fears, particularly of the unknown. It is deep-rooted and primal. Exploring the unknown or disregarding caution often got our ancestors killed. How we address and respond to fear operates very much on an unconscious level, which is why reading a Gothic novel or watching a film such as Alien scares us, yes, but we have the safety of being removed from the situation. We end up observers with an elevated heart rate. The things we know, such as hallways and rooms, take on a different aspect tied to the uncanny. The familiar becomes unsettling and frightening. In the past, it was a lack of scientific and psychological understanding that led to speculation and fear. What better setting is there in modern Gothic than outer space and aliens, the last frontier of the unknown? In literature, The Fall of the House of Usher, Dracula, Rebecca, The Haunting of Hill House, and The Shining, pairing titles with the aforementioned authors, should come to mind when thinking of Gothic works. But so should Alien, which features all of the classic elements of the genre. Scott's film, from Dan O'Bannon's script, is a masterpiece in the foundational work for Gothic science fiction, a work of art infinitely more refined than Walpole's novel. Scott tips his hand right after the stylized opening credits, as the refining ship Nostromo comes into view in the vastness of space. It is a spaceship unlike any other depicted on film, and it looks exactly like a dark, floating castle. Scott then takes us inside, before the occupants are interrupted from their cryosleep, and we are shown dark, creepy corridors with a mix of light and shadow. Crew members are awakened long before reaching Earth on a return voyage because the ship has received a signal, which they interpret as one of distress, compelling them by law to investigate.
SOS. I don't know.
Human.
Unknown.
They fly a lander to a very dark planet where a severe storm with howling winds greets them on the surface. It is the very definition of an extreme landscape. They follow the signal to the wreck of an alien spacecraft, which is a large structure in ruins. Inside, there are dark corridors, more wind, and strange sounds. Take the astronauts out of their stiff spacesuits, put them in stiff Victorian garb, switch out their flashlights for torches, and you have a classic scene in a haunted mansion. They encounter a huge alien, long dead, sitting at some kind of control or instrument with a gaping hole in its chest. He's the keeper of the curse, if you will, the eggs in the hold that John Hurt's Cain is about to discover. Not coincidentally, at that moment, Ripley intuits the true nature of the signal in her conversation with Ash, the science officer.
Well, it looks like a warning. I'm going to go out after them.
Scott then masterfully builds suspense and dread as Kane comes into contact with the alien eggs, culminating in one of the great jump scares in film history. Scott and O'Bannon do something very interesting with Ripley, emblematic of the late 1970s. They invert the heroine in need of saving trope, making Ripley a strong, firm, level-headed leader who must try to save the others. She is initially foiled by Ash, who violates both Ripley's command and the quarantine procedures by allowing the crew into the ship with the alien entity. The scene in which they tried to remove the facehugger, as it has come to be called, serves multiple functions, including an illustration of the grotesque, another Gothic element. The grotesque disgusts us, but also inspires empathy. Interestingly, grotesque comes from the Italian word grotto, which means from a cave or crypt, appropriate considering where they found it. The scene also provides great foreshadowing, as we discover the aliens have acid for blood, which makes killing or wounding them problematic. The tension between protagonist and antagonist is clearly established, with Ripley on one side and Ash on the other. Ash seems off, and Ian Holmes sells it completely with his performance. Our foreboding increases when we learn how he was assigned to the mission.
I went out 5 times with another science officer. They replaced him 2 days before we left Thetis with Ash.
The facehugger removes itself from Kane's face, dies, and Kane awakens, seemingly none the worse for wear. We are unsettled by this sudden calm. We know it's too good to be true. This leads to one of the most famous scenes in film history, when the alien bursts from Kane's chest as the crew enjoys a final meal before a planned re-entry into cryosleep. It is grotesque and macabre, something disturbing that is connected to death through terror and horror. The alien scurries out of the galley, and we have a classic scenario. The castle now has a monster in hiding that must be rooted out. It plays itself out by the numbers, yet at no time does it seem cliched. There is a search through dark hallways featuring fading, slanting light, and the familiar is now unsettling. We have a red herring and jump scare with the cat Jonesy, and we know that in short order we will be face to face with something truly terrifying. When Harry Dean Stanton's character, Brett, discovers the shedded skin, we know he's a goner, and when we see what the alien has morphed into, we wonder how anyone will survive. Tom Skerritt's captain, Dallas, pursues it through the air ducts, the ship's secret passages, and the use of light, including an actual torch, and tight spaces with Jerry Goldsmith's iconic score, has us on the edge of our seats until another classic scare. With Dallas gone, Ripley takes charge, seeking answers from the ship's computer. Here, she discovers 2 secrets, one having to do with identity. The company wants the alien to exploit it, and securing it means the crew is expendable. Ash has been working to achieve this all along, and he is an order-driven android, not a human being.
Get her out!
As a machine, he admires the cold and calculating nature of the alien, and his speech echoes Hooper's description of the shark in Steven Spielberg's Jaws.
Perfect organism. Its structural perfection is matched only by its hostility.
Ash is disposed of, but the larger problem remains. The alien quickly dispatches Parker and Lambert, and Ripley then goes about setting the ship to self-destruct, much as a hero would burn down the haunted mansion in a classic Gothic story. Scott expertly sets obstacles in Ripley's way, including the alien blocking the path to the escape pod, and Ripley's inability to disable the self-destruct mechanism. But Ripley manages to get into the shuttle with Jonesy and escape just as the ship explodes behind her. We breathe a sigh of relief. It seems to be finally over. But it's not, of course, and Ripley must kill the alien that has sneaked aboard with her. It's a classic hero versus monster moment. In the aftermath, Ripley settles into a peaceful cryosleep with Jonesy. Now we do breathe a true sigh of relief as the credits roll, perhaps sharing a laugh with whomever we came with, and we talk about it on the ride home. Then we notice how dark it is in the driveway and inside the house. The shadows in the kitchen are creepy. What is that? The cat? We can't get the lights on fast enough.